Martin.
All right, for more, meantime, Malaysian Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin announcing an additional stimulus package worth 10 billion Malaysian ringgit in September, which included 7 billion ringgit in cash aid, assistance for small businesses, and also a wage subsidy scheme. The country's economic growth contracted 17.1% second quarter because of stringent measures adopted to curb the pandemic there during the entire 3-month period. For more, Tengku Zafrul, Tengku Aziz is Malaysia's Minister of Finance. He joins us live from the capital, Kuala Lumpur, for this CNBC exclusive interview. Minister and Dato Sri, good morning. Thank you for your time and great to see you. We have to start on the coronavirus. The number of cases spiking, surging. A lot of people are describing this as a third wave for Malaysia, which does pose a pretty severe challenge for the economy. How can you tell us how close is the government to having to go back to much more stringent movement orders?
Thank you. Good morning, Martin. First of all, regarding the COVID issue in Malaysia, if you look at the numbers, it is going up, but it is concentrated in 2 areas, namely in Kedah and Sabah. And it is very much under control. And of course, there are concerns among the public about the numbers, but if you look at it, if you break down the numbers, it's, like I said, it's really focused in those 2 areas. And we've proven ourselves to be successful in managing COVID, and we can do it again. As Martin, as you mentioned, so far infection in Malaysia around 12,381, actually slightly above 12,000, with a population of 32 million. The recovery rate has been very high. Recovery rate has been 83%. And in terms of healthcare capacity, given that the active cases today is around 1,961, we have around 10,000 beds and more available if needed. So we have definitely, things are under control, health capacity is there, and you will see numbers going at these levels for a while as we do more targeted testing at the detention centres, especially 2 detention centres. And more importantly, Martin, we have flattened the curve before, and we will flatten the curve again.
We will flatten the curve again. Does that mean that the government is considering another partial lockdown, or has that been ruled out?
That's been ruled out because it's targeted in 2 areas. It's not widespread, and the numbers are really in 2 detention centres. If you really look at the breakdown of those numbers, and as you know, testing are being done, targeted testing. So naturally, you will see the numbers going up during this period. But in terms of SOP, we're going to focus more on the enforcement of the SOP going forward.
Okay, standard operating procedures understood. Netting out the detention centers, you referred to Sabah. Obviously, there were state elections there. Are you saying that, ironically, the movement of people between could have potentially been one of the causes for the spikes that we're seeing?
Well, if you look at the causes of the spike, Kedah, there's a detention center there, over 300 now, numbers that are tested positive. Sabah is, of course, we had an election there, but if you look at the breakdown of the numbers again, it's not entirely because of the election. There are people there who go for business, they go for tourists, Malaysian domestic tourism. So those are the real reason. And if you look at the number of Malaysians coming from Sabah to Peninsular Malaysia, we have done testing at the airports, and only slightly more than 1% are tested positive.
Minister, can you bring us up to speed in terms of the national airline? How would you describe its financial health? Has Malaysia Airlines approached you for additional funding and financial support, and does it need it?
Thank you. Thank you, Sri. Malaysia Airlines, the shareholder is Khazanah, and Khazanah is looking into this at the Ministry of Finance, and we are leaving it to the government, to Khazanah, to deliberate on this matter. It is completely commercial, and both airlines, Malaysia Airlines and Asia, have own shareholders. So government feel at this point in time that we will not bail out any airlines. So it's up to their shareholders of the respective airlines to provide any support that they feel appropriate and necessary. So, but the government primary concern is, of course, to ensure there's sufficient connectivity, that is necessary to support the continued economic recovery and socio-economic development also of the country.
And just getting back to the measures that you have in place to support the local workforce, and world over, people have lost their jobs. They continue to lose their jobs because of the absolutely profound impact of COVID. Do you plan in Malaysia to extend the wage subsidy program?
Thanks, Sri. As mentioned earlier by Martin, the Prime Minister recently announced a 10 billion stimulus package, which brings the stimulus package that we've announced totaling now from 295 billion ringgit to 305 billion ringgit, which includes a fiscal injection of close to 55 billion ringgit. And the biggest of that is amount that is being allocated is for the wage subsidy. And in that 10 billion announcement that was done about perhaps 3 weeks ago, we announced the continuation of the wage subsidy, which has been very successful. If you look at the unemployment rate in Malaysia, it peaked in May at 5.3%. Then it went down to 4.9% in June, and now is at 4.7% in July. And therefore, we have decided that this is a good program to have, and we have continued for another 3 months, and that will be until end of May 2021.
And Minister, can I just get your view on portfolio inflows and the perception of Malaysia by foreign investors? Because one story I'm sure that you're watching is how Malaysian government bonds have been placed on the watch list, remain on the watch list for possible exclusion by FTSE Russell. On balance, do you think how would you characterise this decision or this attitude by FTSE Russell? Do you think it's unfair? Do you think it's warranted? And what are the risks, do you think, of Malaysian bonds being excluded?
Thank you. Well, if you look at where we are today, that's not a change in their position, and we respect the decision that was made. We're not concerned. We're not overly concerned. It has been on the watch list for a while now. There has been positive bond inflows, in fact, for 4 consecutive months for Malaysia. So we are quite optimistic that this will continue. It is important that we continue to manage the COVID well, and because this is our business age, and Malaysia is definitely open for business.
Minister, the stimulus and also the support that you were just referring to, the latest 10 billion package, it brings a total to, you've thrown literally the equivalent of almost a quarter of Malaysia's GDP at stimulus and helping to support the economy through the coronavirus. Even before the coronavirus, though, people like the World Bank were concerned that Malaysia had limited fiscal room or space to move simply because government revenues have been declining for the last 8 years or so. How tight are things in terms of finances for Malaysia's government right now?
Yes, the fiscal stimulus is about 20% of our GDP. Actually, Martin, our revenue is increasing apart from this year for obvious reasons. And therefore, we are anticipating and forecasting the deficit will go up this year for Malaysia. Deficit will be around 5.8 to 6%. Most of it funded by domestic borrowings. The fiscal injection, like I mentioned before, totals about 55 billion ringgit, and this will be funded through government borrowing. We are still focused on fiscal responsibility, of course. We have a debt to GDP now at around 53%. It will end around 56%. We have approval from Parliament to go up to 60%, right? But what's positive is that we are optimistic, just like IMF and World Bank, that Malaysia's GDP next year will be in the region between 5.5 to 8% GDP. Of course, this year we will anticipate a negative growth for Malaysia. Our central bank has forecasted a growth of between negative 5.5 to negative 3.5 for this year. But it's important to look forward and making sure that we have that recovery this year. But we are seeing that shoots of recovery in Malaysia. The numbers are improving as we open the economy in early May, 4th of May.
And the same is true globally, Minister, but it still remains a fragile recovery. Minister, we're very grateful for your time today. Thank you very much. Tengku, Zafrul, Tengku Aziz, the Malaysian Finance Minister. We will be back in 2 minutes. Thank you.